For more than 70 years, humanity has known about a highly efficient way to convert electrical energy into mechanical energy through the Yutkin electrohydraulic effect, or electrohydraulic effect for short. But as usual, the effect isn't used daily. There is nothing about it or its creator in Wikipedia, and official science is very reluctant to mention either the effect itself or its creator Lev Yutkin with his more than 100 inventions. As always, the reason is its super efficiency and an efficiency rate of several thousand%, which, as we know from official science and physics textbooks, is supposed to be impossible. The outstanding Soviet physicist and inventor Lev Alexandrovich Yutkin was born on August 5, 1911 in the city of Belozersk, Volgograd region. He entered the university only in 1930 after 2 years of mandatory work at a factory as a turner due to his class unreliability. In his 4th year at the university in 1933, Lev Yutkin achieved his first significant results in the field of the electrohydraulic effect. Soon after his discovery in 1933, he was imprisoned under Article 58 for treason against the motherland. The accusation was absurd. They claimed he tried to blow up a bridge using his electrohydraulic discharge. There was an opinion that Yutkin invented his EH only in 1950, since it was in that year that the effect was patented. But that's not actually the case. He conducted and completed most research on the electrohydraulic effect in the 1930s. And according to him, he developed the complete theory of the electrohydrodynamic effect as early as 1938. The electrohydraulic effect, as described by Yutkin, is a powerful hydraulic shock with local pressure exceeding 100,000 atmospheres, which occurs when a high voltage spark discharge passes through a water gap. In fact, it explodes the water. That's why people commonly call this effect simply a hydraulic shock. Although, to be fair, the scientific meaning of hydraulic shock is quite different from this phenomenon and has nothing to do with Yutkin's effect. To produce such an electrohydraulic shock, alternating current from the mains is supplied to a step-up transformer where the voltage is increased to several kilovolts. Then the electric current is rectified by diodes and sent to a capacitor where the voltage accumulates to the required value. After that, a high voltage breakdown occurs between the electrodes placed in the water when a certain value is reached, which generates the electrohydraulic shock manifested as a loud bang, with a local increase in pressure of several tens of thousands of atmospheres. I would also add my own question. Where does this energy come from? What is actually exploding there? By using a high-powered electric charge, electrolysis of water occurs, breaking it down into its components, hydrogen and oxygen. And this explosive mixture ends up in a water bubble, which immediately explodes, and as we know, water is almost impossible to compress. And that's where such enormous pressure is created. It turns out that the energy of the explosion comes from the decomposition of the water itself. In fact, anyone can assemble such a device at home. In fact, this is the invention of a perpetual motion machine as long as there is water, which is why this invention is being kept quiet. In the diagram, there is an electrical circuit for reproducing an electrohydraulic shock with a single forming gap. R is the charging resistor, TER transformer V, rectifier FP forming spark gap, RP working and spark gap in the liquid, C is the working capacitance capacitor. One of the most significant practical values and advantages of this effect is its 100% repeatability and the simplicity of implementation, even at home, without the use of expensive laboratory equipment and materials. The author himself has repeatedly upgraded and improved his designs. For example, the same basic circuit was eventually implemented using 2 spark gaps. According to its creator, this greatly increased the steepness of the pulse fronts and made the circuit much more efficient and easier to tune. The electrical circuit for reproducing the effect with 2 shaping gaps. This movement is an incomplete sampling, and how? To the right. A small one of them. Something from weightiness, but additionally I have in mind drawn disparate. We place the book, it matches the gills. The pressure dl is evenly spread across the whole water volume. This property can be used for crushing and grinding rock, metal pressing and stamping, as well as for converting into other types of mechanical energy, for example into torque, by using crank and connecting rod mechanisms. A special design that could actually replace today's gasoline engine. Local temperature increase. According to the author and independent researchers of this effect, when the Yutkin effect is present, the temperature of the liquid rises incomparably faster than the amount of electrical energy spent to create this effect. This makes it possible to build highly efficient heating devices based on this effect. This heating property appears together with the above-mentioned property of local pressure increase, which makes it reasonable to use both of these properties at the same time. Extraction of Brown's gas from water. Since this property was not discovered by the author himself but by his later followers, it is not as well studied, especially its quantitative aspect. How efficient is extracting this gas? Brown's gas is already a mix of hydrogen and oxygen. But in any case, it would be a useful addition to the two effects obtained. In fact, with one microexplosion, we get three effects at once. More detailed technical information about this effect and the author's other discoveries and inventions can be found in the book being offered. This topic is also actively discussed on our forum. On the forum, researchers actively share information, talk about their experiments and experiences, and discuss what they have achieved in experiments with this effect. In the 1970s, a boat was built using a new method. River water was taken, a hydraulic shock created in an explosion chamber, and the water forcefully expelled. This gave the boat excellent speed and power. This development was stopped due to significant detonation. In fact, such a hydraulic shock stuns the fish. Of course, they could have come up with a muffler, just like with regular engines, but apparently they decided not to pursue this topic further. Here we need to understand, by producing such engines, the government was essentially releasing a fuel-free perpetual motion generator, which global management simply could not allow. Yutkin's effect opened up incredible possibilities in various fields. In the experiments, the impulse power of the strike reached 100 megawatts, which is comparable to the output of a solid power plant. In front of the shock wave, the pressure rises up to 30,000 atmospheres. During the impulse discharge, emissions such as X-rays in the ionizing range, acoustic waves, electromagnetic fields, and high-speed fluid flows occur. And finally, cavitation, which occurs when the discharge zone collapses. The beauty of breaking stones using this method is that the consumption of materials and electricity for this process is minimal. Moreover, with this effect, a stone block can be cut like with a laser, and when combined with electronic technologies, nowadays you could practically work wonders with stone. This effect lets you clean a ship's bottom. No radical methods against fouling on ships have been found so far, and this method would be ideal. Subtitles. There is also a method based on the Yutkin effect for removing stones from the bladder using discharges. It can also be added that methods of seismic exploration and vibrolubrication have been developed based on the Yutkin effect. Methods for creating stable mixtures from substances that usually do not mix: water, kerosene, alcohol, gasoline, and most importantly, all of this is very economical. Besides mechanical effects, the process alters water's chemical composition and greatly increases the solubility of elements and compounds. Up to 95% of metal compounds dissolve into the water, forming colloids. This opens up even more exciting areas of application. For example, Yutkin proposed a shaftless and pitless method of extracting metals from underground. The layer is washed through a system of wells with water treated by ethylene glycol, and the resulting metal colloids are pumped out, where after 10 to 15 minutes of settling, almost pure metal precipitates out. And all this is done without any smelting furnaces with their vegetation-killing emissions. For a version of the scale at which our ancestors extracted minerals in this way, watch the video on the channel Mountains Were Poured from Waste of Pasty Thickening of Rocks on a Planetary Scale. Furthermore, electrohydraulic processing of metallurgical slag not only allows for the extraction of the remaining metal, but also turns the slag itself into raw material for cement production or into fertilizers. And here we move on to the second, which became the main area of Yutkin's work. In principle, the soil contains enough nutrients to last for hundreds of years, but for the most part they are in a form that is unavailable for absorption, as they are bound. Yutkin aimed to harness the soil's vast potential, and his method fundamentally transforms agricultural technology. Imagine a tractor moving across the field with a water tank, occasionally scooping up a few handfuls of soil with a small bucket and spraying or pouring the pulp into the furrow. Tractor. Electrohydraulic treatment converts potassium and phosphorus fertilizers, as well as about 30 other essential trace elements, into a solution available for plant absorption. At the same time, one handful of soil per square meter is quite enough for a whole year. The water used in the pulp isn't ordinary. Thanks to electrohydraulic treatment, the nitrogen contained in the air dissolved in the water. 78% of nitrogen turns into nitrogen fertilizers directly from the air. Nitrogen combined with hydrogen and oxygen totals about 600 grams per ton of water. Yutkin called this fertilizer-free fertilizer. In fact, you can also treat rainwater using the electrohydraulic method, which usually contains soil in the form of silt. In a more complex version, such a tractor can simultaneously perform plowing and sowing, and as a result we get the desired one-pass farming system. The revolutionary and environmentally important aspect of this engineering solution is also that there is no longer any need for quarries and dusty factories producing fertilizers, and the need for their mass transportation is completely eliminated. Yutkin's great achievement is that he, in a way, rediscovered peat. It turns out that with the help of electrohydraulic processing, you can get 9 kilograms of nitrogen, 4 kilograms of potassium, half a kilogram, plus the same 30 different trace elements from 1 cubic meter of peat. This allows liquid fertilizers, the most advanced type, to be produced directly on a peat field at the individual farm level using a low-cost standard unit with up to 200 kilowatts of capacity. Calculations show that, thanks to increased crop yields, the cost of the unit will pay for itself more than 10 times over in just 1 year. The use of electrohydraulically treated peat for seed yeast treatment also makes this method more rational, making it both more economical and more effective at the same time. There are also groups of engineering solutions for land reclamation, for example, methods for reducing the drainage of sandy soils and increasing the drainage of clay soils. A trenchless underground laying method, and at the speed of a tractor. Concrete pipes, which with certain technological variations to make them porous, can serve as a drainage network. A method for cleaning water intake well filters, increasing the well yield by 2.5 to 18 times. There are also electrohydraulic methods for turning coarse feed like straw into full value feed. Disinfection of manure, destruction of helminth eggs that can withstand even 20,000 Roentgens of radiation but are completely destroyed by an electrohydraulic shock. Disinfection, sterilization of various kinds of products, ensuring both their long-term storage and safe consumption. Therefore, based on patent documents, around 1,000 engineering solutions have emerged from the phenomenon of liquid discharge. And this is what we read in the magazine Technika Molodezi from 1982. Using the example of such Yutkin effects, we can see how rational it would be to use the Earth's resources without destroying nature, but on the contrary, by replenishing its resources.